All right, we'll get to
Okay, good morning, council. Can we get a mover and a seconder to open up the meeting? Moved by Councilor Douglas Bennett, second by Councilor Ted Shenman. Be it resolved that we do call this special meeting of council to order on Saturday, March 25th, 2023 at 10:05 a.m. And if there's nothing, no opposition, we'll move on. If is Belinda on with us? Belinda, I'm going to hand over the meeting to you for item number 2, please. Okay, well, we're figuring out Belinda. Councilor Stefan, would you like to do the acknowledgement?
Sure, thank you. The Council Corporation Township of Hornepayne would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the land that on which we gather here today is Treaty Number 9, 1905, 1906 territory, the traditional lands of indigenous peoples. As we work towards reconciliation, may we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're on to item number 3, approval of agenda. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councilor Ted Shenman, second by Councilor Douglas Bennett. Be it resolved that council does hereby approve the agenda as presented. And if there's no opposition, we'll continue. Item number 4 is the declaration of pecuniary interest and declaration of conflict of interest. I don't see any now, and at any time throughout the meeting, you can present that if the situation presents itself. And 5.1 is our presentation. So just before we go to our presentation, is Belinda, Councilor Kissemaker, with us? No. Good morning, Michael and David. It's nice to have you again with us in council chambers and virtually in Hornepayne. Always a pleasure.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
We're just ensuring that all of council's here with us. We have one councillor that has to participate virtually because she's in Thunder Bay on meetings on behalf of the township as well. And Councillor Kistemaker Peter will be down shortly. It says there's 5 participants. Who are the other 2? One would be Jan, right? Yeah. And I believe Belinda was the first one. Okay, something potentially she's subject to. Is she still showing? I'm not sure if I can check on here the screen. Okay. I texted her, but she just answered it. Okay, so that's something we should know from the hybrid meetings. We're going to have to have another participant. Is that through the problem, Jen? We had morning in the meeting. Potentially. Okay. I'm just checking. She's not in here. Okay, and we're going to turn the chat function. Okay, I think that for consideration of time, that Municipal Wayfinders is here. We'll start, and if there's anything that we want to pause and continue on when the 2 other members are present, we'll do that. We'll carry on that way. So the floor is yours, Michael and David. Thank you for being here, and have at her.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's always good to be back and chatting with you. Today we're going to be speaking about the consultation summaries that we've compiled on your behalf from the consultations that occurred with Council, staff, and through an online survey. So I'm getting a bit of an echo. I don't know if you are, Madam Mayor?
No, we're not getting an echo here at all.
Okay, all right.
if I'm on the line, maybe, I don't know if it's.
Oh, hello, Belinda. Thank you for, we were trying to find you and we couldn't, see if you were there or not. I'm glad you're with us. Would you be able to mute your microphone, Belinda, please?
I have to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
I don't know how to do that. I'll have to call back. Keep going without me. Sorry.
Well, just a second. Are you on a phone? Are you on the hotel phone?
I'm on the phone.
Okay. And is it your own phone? Could she raise her hand though? No, she couldn't. Okay, you're gonna try calling back in? No, she's still there.
Are you still getting an echo?
Well, no, the echo was actually when I was speaking. I think it was coming back, perhaps through the phone, but it seems to have disappeared a bit. So why don't we give it a shot and see how it goes?
Okay.
So as I was saying, members of council, so this is the consultation summary of what we collected. It is not every single piece of feedback that we got, but it is a consolidation or a synthesis of what we would describe as the predominant themes. So along the way, if you mention something and it's not there and you feel it's worthy of some further discussion, please do not hesitate to introduce that into the discussion. I expect the presentation to be about 20 minutes to a half an hour, and then whatever time it takes for council to discuss any issues, ask any questions. By all means, we'll be here to do that. And the intent today is really to give council that second opportunity to hear and see what was collected and provide any additional direction as a council that you may wish to do. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to make sure that I can still share. Yep. Okay. And I will put up the slideshow in a moment. All right. Council, you see what's on the screen now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So we'll begin with some background here. So in 2020, council adopted its first strategic plan well, we think it's the first one in recent history. I wasn't able to confirm if there ever was any other previous strategic plans, but certainly this is a more recent history one. And with that, council and staff have really been guided by the strategic plan since its adoption. Each year, staff prepares a strategic plan accomplishments report for council consideration. And with a new term of council, it is appropriate to review the strategic plan for relevance, given such things as the passage of time, big world events such as COVID-19, and other world events such as the way the economy is performing these days, and a host of others. So council has authorized a strategic plan refresh, and we're calling it a refresh because you have a solid foundation to build on. You're not starting from scratch. Consultation is at the core of any good planning document, as council knows. And in March, members of council and the senior management team were consulted about the strategic plan refresh. In addition, a brief online survey was posted to solicit high-level community input. The online survey was posted on the township's website. It's our understanding it was noted at council meetings, and posters with QR codes were placed in various township facilities to garner interest. As of Wednesday, 42 people, or 4.3% of the population, had completed the online survey. And for a short duration survey like this, that's a reasonable rate of return. So council was interviewed by the former municipal mayor, and staff was interviewed by a former municipal CAO. Participants were asked about the relevance of the township's current mission and vision statements, core values, key priorities, and action items. Completed action items were identified for removal, and new action items were identified for consideration. The general feedback was that there is a need to manage expectations, to set realistic goals, recognizing that there is a finite capacity to complete the action items. The feedback includes, as I said earlier, a synthesis of the predominant feedback we collected during the interviews. And with that, Council, I'm going to close this particular slideshow, and I'm going to jump to the online survey. So please bear with me 1 second. Right. So we have the summary of the analytics that go behind the strategic plan community survey to discuss. So the first question was, please select the answer that describes your situation. Check as many boxes as applicable. And this is really about, who are you within the town? Are you a homeowner or renter? Do you work within the township? Do you operate a business within the township? And a few other things like vacant land or potential seasonal property. And you can see a large rate of return is, as you would expect, are homeowners and renters, and a good rate of return as well for people who work within the township. So that's good. You've got the business side, if you will, people working there, as well as residents who live there. And this table here just shows the numbers as they shake out. So 97.62% owners or renters, and slightly over 40% for those who work in the township. So good numbers. When it comes to those who are interviewed or who submitted information, the ages is a good mix as well. The only group that we didn't capture was the under 18 group. But as you can see, there's a fairly good mix of everyone else. Again, this is helpful. This ensures that you're getting some good rate of return from various demographic groups. And as you can see, the numbers are somewhere between about 12 and 26% for each of the age groups. So pretty good. When we talk about what's the number of people in the household, we see that, and this is often what we see, is that 2 is the number that we see the most. And then we have a mix of a lower mix of 1, 3, 4, and 5 or more. So you can see that almost half the people that have people in their houses are 52%. So a couple of questions to help sort of guide discussion later as we get into the actual content that might be applied to your refresh is it easy to connect with township staff? And the numbers are quite good here, Council. We see a lot of these. We ask this question often as we're doing work. The numbers are very good. Over 60% agree, and over 20 some odd percent strongly agree. So those are really strong numbers. So you're looking at over 84% favorable response. That's quite good. So that's good on your staff and good on council. When you're looking at for municipal information, do the people visit the township's website? I would say there's a bit of room for improvement here, and it's something to think about, council. If you want to start working on some sort of a promotional program to get more people involved in the website, you've recently spent some time and effort into getting a very functional website. It's quite a good one. So we do see that there are sort of moderate and little or not at all numbers there that are dominant here. So we would like to see something a little higher than that. Are you aware that township council meetings are online? Yes, very dominant response there. So that's good. And that allows people to know when and where to go for information about what's going on at the council level. So 83%, that's a very high number. How would you rate the condition of roads within the township? This is where we see some not great numbers. we don't see very much in the way of above average, even a low number on average, and then we have a fairly strong number of below average. And if we look at how those numbers shake out, less than 20% on average and 78% on below average. So that should be something that informs your thought process as part of your strategic plan. And it certainly did come up in discussions with council and staff as well. How do we rate the quality of the township's winter plowing operations? This is quite good. We see that a very strong number, about 50%, say it's above average, and about 40% say it's average. So those are really good numbers as well, council. So what you're looking at here is over 90% favorable response. So you should be pleased with that. So would you support a moderate increase in taxes or fees if it resulted in noticeable improvements to municipal services, such as improved roads, snow plowing, parks, or fire services? And we ask this question a fair amount as well, council, and we often see this sort of close split, not exact split, but fairly close, you know, sort of that 60-40 split is what we're seeing here. That's pretty common. And it's one of the things that councils have to wrestle with because it is very close. It's not super far apart. So we're looking at almost 43% and 59%. So you can see it's close, and that's something to consider. Would you support a moderate increase in taxes and fees if it resulted in enhanced or increased opportunities for local arts, culture, recreation, or leisure services? Again, close numbers again. So it's one of those sort of balancing acts that councils have to think about. And again, this is a common response we see as well. This came up a lot during our consultation with council and staff, and rightfully so. So it's another thing to consider. Numbers shake out almost identical, 40 and 59%. So very, very close. So when it comes to looking at top priorities, what we found, so this is your community's thoughts on top priorities over the next 5 years. When it comes to rating them, there were two that stood above the rest, and then the others sort of were in another cluster. So just because it's a little easier to read, I'm going to move to the table. When it comes to investment towards infrastructure rehab projects, such as roads, parks, and facilities, we see a pretty high score, and that's your top score. Again, something you should think about. So the score is 4.38. But fairly close, as well as strengthening the local economy through attracting new businesses and more new homes at 4. So that's a fairly close one. And then the others seem to be clustered together at about the same. So technology enhancements to improve the way you conduct business with the township. You've already got some good ones there. Expanded or enhanced arts, recreation, culture, and leisure services, and beautification throughout the municipality. All about the same, fairly close. But clearly the top two are sort of stand above the other ones. So something you should keep in mind going forward. That is that part of the presentation, council. So I will shift back to the other one. Just bear with me one moment, please. All right. So I'll just move to the next slide. All right. So mission and vision statement. So just a bit of a background again. Your mission is, who are you? What are you about? What is it that makes you the Township of Hornepayne? And your vision is a target somewhere out in the distance. Where do you want to be in the future? So your current mission statement reads, we're a municipality focused on providing value-added experience to our citizens, visitors, and investors. When it comes to the feedback, the mission statement was generally viewed to be relevant. There was some discussion about tweaking it almost more grammatically than actual content, but overall there was a sentiment that was generally viewed to be relevant. So that's again, when it comes to mission statement, that's who you are, that's what you're about. As we move to the vision statement, which is your goal, where you want to be in the future, it reads, our quest for continual improvement and quality of life will make us the township where people want to live, work, visit, and invest. So that's where you want to be in the future. So with this one, we did still get what was generally viewed to be relevant in terms of what your future goal is. There was a suggestion, and whether it fits into your vision or somewhere embedded in the body of your document, I think the objective of this suggestion, I think, is a worthy one of consideration. A suggestion to consider some more succinct statement that facilities and services are managed for optimal efficiency for the benefit of our residents. I think that's a reasonable thing to have somewhere in your plan, and I do think you may wish to if not adjust your vision, you may wish to sort of embed this type of philosophy into your plan. I think it makes good sense, especially for where you are in your journey. Is there any questions on mission or vision statement? Nothing yet?
So then your suggestion, Michael, then is to keep it exactly as the same as it is right now?
Well, that's what we heard. We think they're both reasonable ones, and with the addition of some introduction of the philosophy of that last statement somewhere embedded in your plan. That would be our recommended direction based on what we've heard from throughout our consultations.
Okay.
And as a sort of a secondary point, it does align fairly well with the second priority. When you think about your vision, it works quite well with that second priority that we heard that was ranked number 2. So happy to answer any questions or specifics.
Just one comment, Michael, that I did hear was if the two statements remained the same, there was a comment about using in one statement it uses the terminology township, and in the other one it uses the term municipality. If they were to keep these two statements the same, they may want to consider using the same terminology in each of them. So that was.
Yes, and Council, on that point, I'll just add that, yeah, we did hear a bit of this sort of grammatical tweaking that would make it better, some sort of finer edits, if you will, and we've made note of those, and we will do those as a matter of course because we think they were all fairly good suggestions. This is one example of that. Are we okay to move to the next slide, Madam Mayor?
Yes, let's continue.
Okay. So when it comes to core values that the township has embraced as part of the previous or the current strategic plan are integrity, accountability, and transparency, hardworking, respectful, and inclusive. We did hear some other suggestions, but what we heard was, yes, those are still generally relevant, but there were a few other suggestions, and those were responsible, constant improvement, and resident focused. So again, not dissimilar to what I was saying before, but if there's a general sense that the core values are relevant, these other themes that are sort of emerging as additional feedback could also be worked into language within the body of the strategic plan if council were to feel that way. There was also a suggestion, we think it's a good one, to frame or describe the core values in terms of how you connect the dots between the core values and the township, and we think that's reasonable as well and a good idea, and we would suggest that occur. So, Council, do you have any comments or questions for us on this slide?
Council? No? I would like to see the inclusion of resident focus. I think this council does a good job of focusing on the staff and trying to ensure that they have their training in that. And my understanding is if you take care of the staff, they take care of your client, in our case, which is a resident. And I think we need to bring that into our core values because it connects directly with the work that the staff does.
We're certainly able to do that, Madam Mayor. And if council would like that added in without any removals, we can do that, or we can take something out in the core values and replace it. We're in your hands on that. So either way, we're comfortable doing that.
If we were to remove one, I would, not that our staff and council isn't hardworking, but that would be the replacement. That would be the replacement language that I would have. If council, or we can just add it. It's up to council's choice. Go ahead.
I would like to add it.
Add it, okay.
I would not remove anything.
Okay, no removals and additions, I think. It's just the addition.
Okay, thank you.
Not just the addition, the addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And seeing, describe the core values, I like that that's going to be included in there. And then there's no discrepancy on what we're talking about.
Right. Okay. If we're okay to move to the next slide then.
Yes, let's continue.
So key priorities and action items. The action items are the ones for removal first. So we're talking about things that may have been completed or less relevant today. So first on the key priority, there's no removal, but there was a suggestion, we think it's a reasonably good one too, is to adjust the governance key priority by adding the word "and administration." It's a little more clear. It allows for a little more flexibility about what goes underneath it as well. We often see this type of language, and we think that's reasonable. So that's the key priority. We did not have any feedback on any other key priorities. They all seem to be felt to be relevant. When it comes to the action items now, the suggestion is that they may be removed due to the fact that they're complete, that maybe they've been shifted over into the departmental work plan, so they've been integrated there, and they're less of a strategic matter and now more of an operational matter. And or there may be a lack of relevance just because of the passage of time or other things. So when we talk about the governance heading, the ones that were suggested for removal because of one of those reasons above, so integration with departmental work plans and the likes, the biannual SDR reporting, the annual term of council, the annual end term of council SDR reviews, the annual strategic plan reporting, the adoption of a delegation of authority bylaw, and the adoption of streamlined procedure bylaw. Those are the ones that have essentially been either completed or integrated into other processes that you already have in place, and are part of your ongoing routine. Does council have any questions or comments on this slide?
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, through the mayor. For the removal of due completion, I agree with that. However, I like all the projects that were completed. I like to have an archives, so we are keeping a record that has been completed. So when new members of council come on board, they can actually see what the real work was done, or a taxpayer ratepayer comes in and says what has been done last 3 years. I think that's really crucial to me.
Yeah, and I think that sort of report card process is essential as well. And we've been in discussions with your staff about making sure that the ongoing tally remains relevant and gets reported to council so that they can continually see how things are being done. We think that's a good approach. Are there any other questions or comments on this slide?
Eileen does.
Just to answer Councillor Stefanik's request, it is we already have that in the most current strategic plan report card, and it has it for 2021 and 2022.
Okay. Yeah, I think
All
that's
items
to follow up with Councillor Stefanik. I think it should be, I put a note that we should have an annual report card that's presented to the public. That's more streamlined than that document. That's a one-pager sort of something easy to digest for the public. I think you're more in line with that.
100%. I want some clear, precise, and
Like-
person has to spend 2 hours on it. 15-minute or glance, oh, this was completed, thank you.
Yeah, just because something like that where the council sees that, it's very well done. But
Yes, it
there's
is.
Public contention.
So
I do-
I-
sorry, go
Similar
ahead.
to your, Madam Mayor, similar to your at a glance document, a sort of an abbreviated completed list.
Yeah, I put a note earlier when we were talking about the website, Michael. I think we'll bring this back to council to discuss for our communication, and this is part of our communication plan is in here. But like we were talking about promotion of our website, I put down, magnets for the fridge. We're talking about highlighting what we've done for the weight room facility. There's all sorts of like these celebrations that the town doesn't necessarily know of. And if we're going to do a mail out, let's do one big, annual mail out or something like that. So it's all condensed and we know it's coming. And it doesn't necessarily, not saying we have to send out magnets every year for their fridge, but that would be a great way to highlight the website. Like, go here for information, you can't find it, then call, sort of, maybe something like that. Those are just ideas I'm jotting down as we're going along, but I think along the lines of what Councillor Stefanik is saying and what we discussed at our last council meeting, we need to celebrate our wins so that the town can celebrate as well, the people who live here. But I do have a question about the change of title.
Yes.
And I just want to have the rationale behind that because, and I'll say why I'm asking the question is when we first got on as council in 2018, we tried very diligently to make the divide between administration and government because of the possibility that was happening in the past of maybe too much council input into the daily activities of staff, which is inappropriate and shouldn't be happening. And so I wanted more clarity on why we're adding that to a strategic plan of council.
Yeah, good point. So everything on the list, whether it's every one of your key priorities and action items are council's list. You own it. But for completing them, many of them will require a level of effort from your professional staff. So when we look at governance and administration, there is a difference, and I agree with that, Madam Mayor. However, when you look at some of the action items that fall under that category that are probably best put there because of your other key priorities, there are a few there that apply directly to your staff. And I'm going by memory without putting it up here, but for example, a succession plan for staff. That's kind of an administrative thing. It is a strategic priority of council to ensure that it's put in place. It sort of falls in the HR domain. So that was the relevance or the rationale, if you will, behind adding administration. If you would like for us to frame that a bit in sort of preamble about a few things, we can certainly attempt to do that if that would give you more comfort.
Well, my feeling on it is that when I look at the key priority and action items, that administration could be added to each heading. Because council should not be really doing any of these things. We're setting the governance at the higher level, and then everything should be implemented by staff, right?
Yeah,
like
that is a perspective, Madam Mayor. David, did you want to say something?
I just had a couple of suggestions. We could put like a subheading for governance and administration to clearly define the difference. So I understand the point the mayor's trying to make. So to try to differentiate them somehow would be, I think, appropriate. And just going back to the earlier comment about the report card of things that have been completed or have been implemented, it would be pretty easy for us to do an at-a-glance document within the body of the updated strategic plan that would highlight those. We've already done it as part of our exercise. I don't know whether, Michael, you have that slide coming up, but
I do.
That would be easy to insert that into the document, so you'd have a really succinct report card of what has been done or what has been implemented already.
Yes, and that in fact could be utilized as a tool on an annual basis, Councillor Stefanik, if you wanted to, for some sort of a release. It would be easy to, if we were to provide it to staff in a format that they could work with to strike it out. But I can get to that when we get there. So, Madam Mayor, just to loop back on the governance. So we see both, and it's what council's most comfortable with. I've seen it where it does say governance and administration. I've sometimes seen other terminology like human resources and governance. It really comes down to level of comfort with council. We can do it either way. We can leave it as is, or we can define it a little better. It's up to you.
Well, from my perspective, I'm always looking at setting it up for the next term of council. And my concern is that we don't want to end up in a situation where a next term of council takes that, and then we're understanding at this time, they're going to use this document to create their next plan. And it might be a whole 5 new people sitting at the table. We don't know that. So that's my concern, is as a protection of staff and council not getting in the weeds, because council's looking at this document and we want to ensure that it stays at the governance level. That's my concern about it. It's up to council whether that, like, it's one word, but we were so adamant on taking that out that and it's not I don't mind having, and I'm not sure where the comment come from. It's not a disrespect. It comes from I just don't want councillors or myself or any future councils to get into the daily operations. That's where I stand on it.
So I appreciate the concern about role creep, and that's a valid one. It does happen. We see it all the time. So if council would prefer just remaining with governance, we're happy to do that.
Councillor Stanek, go ahead.
Yeah, through Mayor. Working for the municipality for 26.5 years, let me tell you the interference, and I agree with the mayor, exactly what he's saying, 100% governance alone. I want no interference happening whatsoever.
Fair enough.
Any feedback from council?
That covers everything.
Stick with the status of governance. Ted, do you have Councillor Shannon?
No, I'm gonna have to agree with you simply on the fact that I haven't that past experience to see that. So I trust your wisdom and council's wisdom.
Okay.
And I do believe that's something that we worked hard on the last term, was to let our staff do their jobs and leave them alone, because that's why they're hired and they're very good at it.
Yes, and if they need support, we give that support
Yes.
through training and through other like.
Well, I think we have it there, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is why we do these. Okay, so when we get into the topic of infrastructure and asset management, now I will ask council to think back to that presentation with respect to the rating that the township is getting for roads. Now this is removal, but coordination of capital projects. That is happening now. We're seeing that with the plan for 3rd Avenue, and we expect that will continue. It's no longer a strategic objective, it's more of an operating objective, so we think it's reasonable that that can come out. With respect to the hot box, which we understand, and we've seen a report that went to council about its removal, we do have some concerns there, Madam Mayor. This relates to our service delivery review report that we provided for council some time ago. And we have some concerns about the rationale behind the removal, especially in light of the feedback on roads. And we would like to address that when it comes to the point when we talk about the inclusion portion. David and I will talk to you about some of the concerns we have, and we'll make some recommendations there. So I just wanted to flag, it's been flagged for removal, but we'd like to discuss it one last time with you before you make that decision to remove it from the document itself.
Okay.
Finance, so grant monitoring protocols, they're in place. From what I see, you're following some pretty standard processes that a lot of municipalities follow. So I think that's there. and you have completed the comprehensive user fee study, which is a big undertaking from your financial side. So that's good work. Economic development. So we have a number of things that have either been completed or are now part of what formulate operational work plans. So form smart partnerships, online business and available properties registry, MPAC to review local property valuations. Our understanding is a consultant was retained to do that and has completed that work. The community improvement plan is very near completion. It's completed. You're just waiting for the province to provide any feedback as part of their normal and standard process associated with reviewing these. Municipal Service Corporation, the comprehensive zoning bylaw, another huge undertaking, completed and well done, and opportunities for municipally owned commercial properties. Those are the ones recommended for removal, and I'll show one more and then I'll open it up for discussion. Oh, sorry, no, I thought there was one more to follow. So on this series of removals, does council have any questions or feedback that they'd like to convey to us?
I do have one question. I asked this question actually at council the other night. Is the smart partnerships, could you elaborate what that is? Is that just good networking, or is that an actual program?
Well, I'm not sure if Stacy's present. Is she present?
No.
No, she's not there? Okay. My understanding was it was just looking for the opportunities to establish connections with other people in the business, if you will, of doing things like economic development, and also connecting with others in the municipal sector who also offer these types of sort of services. So it's more about connections, I think, than it is about like an ongoing program. And from what I understand, those connections are fairly solid now that they've been made.
Okay, thank you for that, Michael. Any other questions?
Something else?
Okay, I think we can carry on. Oh, Councillor Shenman?
No.
No, okay, no, carry on.
Okay. So in the technology side of things for removal, financial process improvement platforms and strategies, council meetings online, and if I recall, you did that before COVID, and which is good on you as well. The enhanced website with fillable forms and online payment, excellent. You know, this is where everybody's heading, and I suggest you're a bit ahead of the curve for municipalities of your size. And the electronic records management contract has been let and will be completed, so it could come off your strategic priorities. Master plans, you are now following an annual departmental work plan strategy, and these come to council. And another major planning document, the new official plan, which you needed to do in order to then proceed with your zoning bylaw. So that's a big undertaking as well. So the remaining action items have been suggested to stay or be modified slightly. So any questions on those, council?
No questions, but I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the staff that got our website up and online everything. That was a request of the public back in 2018, 2019, and it seems to be working. So this is great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful tool for residents. Okay, so if we show now what that graphically looks like, and this will help Councillor Stefanik with his report card approach, but this is from your old plan or from your existing plan, and it just shows more clearly what has been removed. So if you look at, you know, governance, you've done a good job of dealing with 5 pretty big tasks there. So that's good. Infrastructure and asset management, I think there's some work, some opportunities to build on that, and we'll get to that with the introduction of any proposed new ones. Pretty good on the finance side too, taking a good chunk out of that. Economic development, a lot of work been done there. And technology, I'd say you're about halfway into some of the big ones. And also master planning, not bad, some work that could be done there. But this just shows you sort of visually what you're removing from your plan, what we just talked about. So I just thought sometimes people are more visual, so I thought I would show that before moving into the next section. Don't imagine there's any questions here.
No, I do want to point out to council though that over the course of this term, I've learned lots how much should be expected, and doing an official plan and upgrading your zoning bylaw on its own is about a 2.5-year project. That is very, so what has been completed here is really amazing. It really is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Madam Mayor. Those are big undertakings. Okay, so just to Councillor Stefanik's point, this type of tool could be modified somewhat and be utilized for sort of the annual report card process. If we look at new proposed action items that we heard about, so governance and administration, we've dealt with the title, so we will work with that. We heard strong sentiments to implement a succession strategy for the new CAO. We heard that there should be some sort of a plan put in place for this maintenance that needs to go into place for your standing bylaws, your big three bylaws, if you will, which are delegation of authority, procurement, procedural, but other sort of operating type bylaws and policies. So basically setting up a schedule for revisiting them. It doesn't mean you're going to change them, but it makes sure that you're taking a look at them to see if they're still relevant and if there's a need for any adjustments. So for example, it's pretty standard for the delegation of authority bylaw to be reviewed annually. You don't often see it being amended annually, but to be reviewed annually. That's one of the big bylaws that you work on. So, but there are others that might only need to be looked at every 2 or 3 or 4 years. And so setting up a strategy so you can plan ahead for it and apply the resources at the right time, we really agree with that. Adopting a minimum maintenance standards to ensure compliance with the Ontario regulation. You don't have that yet, and we strongly recommend that you do that, especially in a world of joint and several liability. And I know council will be aware of some of the legal implications of that. And also implement enhanced reporting. I think you're working on that, and I think you've made great headway in it. But I think there may be some opportunity to just continue on with that. And based on the feedback from the community survey, we've recommended a promote the website here. Before I go to anything new, I thought maybe we would stay on this topic to see if this rings true to council and if there's any concerns or questions with that one.
I do have one question, Michael, about the minimum maintenance standards.
Sure.
My understanding, now I don't know exactly, but just in conversations with the Good Roads team, that there's some allowances for smaller municipalities of what they're allowed to, how much of it they're allowed to adopt. Because my concern is if we adopt too much or if we try to do too much, we don't have the funds to do that. And then that puts us in a liability state where, like I know right now I have concerns about, some of the few sidewalks we have.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to hear your comments on that.
No, that's a very good point. And clearly you've been hanging around the right people at Good Roads. So I guess the emphasis on this one is your minimum maintenance standards. So what will your minimum standard be for snow plowing, for example? so that it's understood and followed. So you're right. You wouldn't want to bite off more than you can chew. So you do have to be careful about what you include in your minimum maintenance standards. But having a document such as the minimum maintenance standards will protect the municipality. It's really what goes into the content, and your point is well taken.
Okay, great. Because I like to think like, so when we think about snow removal, there will be so much accumulation before we start plowing. These are the types of things that would be in the MMS, right?
Exactly. Also, things like, is there a particular road that gets done first, like maybe the hospital road or maybe a school road or something like that. These are things that you would also put into it. And these are the things that, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this at Good Roads, but as we know, in an event of a accident of some sort or fatality or something like that, even if the municipality is only found to be 1% liable, they may be stuck paying out the full amount of a claim that gets dealt with at a court. And it's that sort of the concept of municipalities are deep pockets, so go to them. But these things can help. They're not going to absolutely mitigate all your risks, but they will assist you in mitigating your risks, and these are important.
Okay, one follow-up question. Is there, for small municipalities, is there a consulting firm that can help develop the MMS?
Yeah, there are, and in fact, we do that as well, and it's not a complicated process. What it involves is sort of having a couple of first principle based documents of similar municipalities, comparing content to what your practices are. So there would be interviews with your operating people to make sure that their procedures are really following what they should be based on best practice. And if they're not, having a discussion around how to make those change. It's not a big undertaking, but it is a bit of work compiling the information and putting it into a usable document. Yes, there are firms who do it.
Thank you. Any other questions from council on the governance portion? No? Okay, I think we can carry on.
Okay, so this next one, infrastructure and asset management. So the completion of the phase 1 arena was identified as a high priority, but also moving forward with doing whatever planning can be done to get phase 2 ready as well. So, you know, some people call that shovel ready, but doing all of the work that you can do so that you're ready as best you can be for potential grant funding or other things like that. The Third Avenue rehab is a major project for the township, so clearly fits well. Dechlorination project, there is a regulation that requires you to do that, so I would suggest to you that is appropriate for inclusion here. Finalizing your ECAs. ECAs are your environmental compliance approvals with the ministry, what used to be called the Ministry of Environment. There's a lot added to that now, but it's Ministry of Environment and Parks and Conservation or what have you. But these are required for your stormwater system and your sewage system, so your sanitary sewage. So that would be a strategic priority. You don't want to be, how do I say this? You don't want to be out of compliance. You want to have those in place. Updating the asset management plan, including for buildings. And in order to accomplish that, the complete building condition assessment is recommended. So this is your long-term strategy on how you're going to proceed with your buildings. And these are assessments of your buildings that would say, look, we've got 50 years left in the building. There's no expansion required, but here are the maintenance procedures versus this building is in pretty difficult condition, would cost a lot of money to bring it back up to standard, maybe make it accessible because it needs to be accessible, maybe make it fit the type of vehicles that you need to put in it. So it would do a comparison, an analytics comparison of rehabilitating the building versus replacing. And it would allow you then to plan for funding. So we think this is what's needed, and we think this is what's needed to go along with the update, the AMP for buildings. So with that, Madam Mayor, when we get to the visual image, I will talk about the hot box a little bit more, but the hot box is in here as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Stanek?
Yeah, through Mayor. When you say a long-term strategy, what's the time frame you're looking at, Michael?
So buildings can live a long time, as you know, and you know, where they are on the life cycle is kind of an important consideration. So the firm that you would retain would have expertise in sort of identifying where each building is in the life cycle. And so it could very well be as quite far out. Really what you want to do is you want to have a plan for the life of the building, whatever that happens to be, and that can be variable. You know, it could be 50 years, for example, or it could only be 10 to 15 years left. So what you're really trying to identify is what is the life of the reasonable life expectancy of your buildings, and planning for whatever maintenance you need, any expansion you need, or if necessary, any replacement. And David, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, and I heard this a couple times. I think the township needs a sort of an overarching strategy for asset management that includes the municipal buildings. And to do that, you really need to make an honest assessment of a few that are near the end of the life cycle and or do not fit the operational needs of the township. The municipal offices obviously would fall in that category. The fire hall would fall into that category. So really to build out the asset management plan and to build out your capital plan, you really need to make an honest assessment of a couple of your buildings and what your plans are, whether they're to rebuild them, make whatever renovations are necessary to make them extend the life cycle. Or the alternative would be to look at consolidation of some of those buildings into a more consolidated municipal environment. That's often done as well. So, but those decisions really are needed fairly soon, so that you can make wise investments into those buildings. So I think that is really the core purpose of the building condition assessment, so you can make an informed decision on how you want to move forward.
And to add to that, these would be very helpful tools for your budgeting process, as well as applying for grants. If the province sees that you've gotten ahead of things and done the study and had it professionally reviewed, and you have a good appreciation for what needs to be done, they are more likely to support a grant application in those situations.
Councillor Stefano?
Yeah, just a follow-up. The reason I asked it because, as you know, this municipal building was built in 1967. It's way past its due date. It's not accessible. The wiring is ancient. The installation is non-existent. So, I mean, I think that would, as you said, and I did make those comments during the interview, this would be number one priority to get this building looked at, and public works would be number two, because that's a drain on the heating system. I mean, there's non-existent insulation at the facility. So yeah, that's the reason I brought that up.
I can get the treasurer to see.
I just wanted to bring it back to council's attention that we are doing this already. We have FCM funding to do the asset management, and we've hired PSD citywide to do the building assessment of all municipal facilities.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments, council?
No, you're okay to carry on.
Okay, and finance. So you did some good work on preparing a 10-year long-range capital forecast. Now it's necessary to ensure that you update it annually. The maintenance program that you want to be on now. So I believe you had that as a strategic objective. I think it needs to remain as a strategic objective to ensure that it's updated annually in coordination with your asset management plan updates. So as you update your asset management plan, you should not lose sight of the fact that you'll need to transfer what needs to be transferred into your long-range capital forecast. So a very important one. We've heard that there's been some great progress made on how the budget is presented, but that there still needs to be some emphasis and priority on the timing of the budget process. So prioritizing the annual timing is one we heard of, and increase investment into asset rehabilitation. So, I mean, obviously, we just talked about buildings. That's one. Your roads, as we saw in the community survey, are another one that's come up. So these are the ones that are suggested for finance. Any questions or comments, Council?
No, not hearing any. You can continue on.
Thank you. Economic development. What we heard was some adjusting of the words for the Hallmark Center to say demolish the Hallmark Center and other derelict buildings. We also heard to sell or develop residential lots, and this is about bringing more housing to the township. Develop industrial lands, and implement a staff proposed five-year growth work plan. So what does that last one mean? You find that larger municipalities will do what's known as an economic development strategy. And it's sort of a strategic plan that focuses on economic development. Doing that in a small municipality, I think it's a little too high off the ground, if you will. It's at 20,000 feet, and it makes sense when you have a big operation. But doing that on its own at the township, we think might not yield a great return. We think that your gap study, which is still outstanding on your list, accompanied with a staff proposed, so for council consideration, a 5-year growth work plan. Where are we going to grow? Where are we going to put our efforts into? We think that sort of as compendium to your gap study would be very helpful. Are there any questions?
I do have some comments on the demolish Hallmark Center and other derelict buildings. I think those should be two separate items.
Okay.
It should be one item. I'm not, I think we should be more proactive with the word demolish and put revitalize Hallmark Center area, because we have the soft yes from Northern Development that they will do the demolishing part if we can find the reinvestment part. So I would like us to focus on where it's going and not on just tearing it down. Because really that's the focus has to be, what are we going to attract to that area? Or we won't get the dollars to demolish.
Okay, that makes some sense. So revitalize Hallmark Center 1 and 2.
I think it should be center area or center location, because we're not revitalizing the actual center, right?
Okay, yeah, okay, center area. And then demolish derelict buildings, or would you prefer slightly different language there?
Yeah, demolish.
Okay.
Demolish derelict buildings, yeah, that should be its own standalone.
Okay. So council is comfortable with those amendments? Okay.
Yeah, we have consensus on the table.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
Does the cell development residential lots and the proposed growth plan, wouldn't that be a similar item?
It could, the cell development residential lots could be part of the growth plan, yes.
Okay, I'm just wondering, like, I'm not.
It certainly could. It's just, I guess, let me put it to you in a different way so the council could think on this. Is it important enough, the fact that you want more homes to come, that you want it to have its own status on your strategic plan? Or are you comfortable enough ensuring that it gets rolled into your 5-year growth plan?
Well, it should be, I guess it could be on standalone, because then that way we can facilitate and use our MSC. And we can partnership there. And then the same things with the growth plan, I guess, because when we're talking about the growth plan, that's talking about industrial, commercial, and business, or and homes?
Yeah, it's the whole package.
Okay. Yeah, okay, now with the clarity, I'd like to see them stand alone, because then we can link in the MSC and possibly partner there with some work to be done to attract homes. They're not going to attract business necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what my interpretation of the work plan, the growth work plan, it was like of an overarching plan that would include the other action items within the economic development. So how do you go about building up the tax base? It's not just residential lots. It's industrial lots. It's doing a gap study to attract commercial development in the area. It's how to go about dealing with the hallmark property. So it's kind of implementing all the other action items into a strategy, into a 5-year strategy. That's kind of what I envision it to be.
Yeah, I think it's needed. I do think it's needed, because then we can see, my concern is when we try and have other services, like when we go to our arts, culture, and recreation strategies, there's going to be the need for further staff. There's going to be the need to hire more people as we add services or expand services. But we can't take that out of the existing tax, business, industrial tax base or residential tax base. So we have to attract. Okay.
Okay.
Any further comments or questions, Council?
I agree with you 100%. It should be standalone, no question.
Okay.
100% has to be accentuated, has to stand out. So it's clear cut. It's not mystified by the rest of the terminology with other rest of the rules and vision. No question.
Okay. Okay, we're good to carry on.
Okay. On the technology side, 2 things. Acquire the MFOA endorsed budget software. We think this will help your staff preparing budgets and preparing them on time, being more efficient, being more clear. And add the word prioritize before the IT disaster recovery plan. We cannot overstress the importance of this. We are aware of many municipalities in the province that have undergone some really disastrous situations, some by nefarious means, but others by fire and other things like that. Knowing how you're going to rebuild and what you need back in your system and having that cataloged and set aside and updated regularly is essential to rebuilding in an emergency. Imagine an emergency and you can't pay anyone. You're going to need to rebuild your software and your systems so that you can start bringing in contractors or what have you. So yeah, absolutely essential. So those are the 2 for technology. Any questions?
I just wanted to add for the IT disaster recovery plan, it is completed. It's just we're now in the maintenance part where we're doing the testing, proceeding into the testing for it.
Okay, when we consulted with staff, Aileen, I had some pretty specific questions about whether certain things were done, because like a disaster recovery plan is a very specific document. And when I asked, do you have this and this and this, what I was told was, no, it's not in place.
So sorry that since that discussion, we found out more information, and that document is now completed. It was just, I wasn't informed at the time.
Okay, what I would suggest, because this is getting into a realm where we would almost be in closed session. So I'll have an offline discussion with your staff to see if what's there is really what's intended by IT disaster recovery plan, and not
Okay.
spend too much time in open.
Sounds good.
Okay. And finally, master plans. Implementation of an accessibility plan. There's a compliance issue there. And prioritize, putting the word prioritize before arts, culture, recreation plans and strategies. So in other words, you know, it's an elevated level of priority. Again, that's number 2 on the rankings as well on the priorities from your community online survey. So it seems to fit with that. Are there any questions on that?
Not seeing any, Michael.
Okay, great. And one thing we're going to do as well is, as you know, Mayor and Council, we did have recommended years. We're also going to suggest a priority ranking for each of your key action items, so that if it's green, it means it's one of the first ones. If it's yellow, it's midterm, and it's orange. And the reason we're doing that is so you can sort of get a sense of priority, but also prerequisite. So if we say one's green and another's yellow and they're connected to each other, you'll know which one to do first. So you'll put your effort on to the green one first, followed by the yellow. That would be like an example of what we've talked about today would be you do your building condition assessment first, and then update your asset management plan second to include buildings. So that would be the intent of that. A little help in prioritizing. Any questions with that?
Not with that. I think that's a great idea, good implementation tool, but I do have a question because I didn't see it. We had talked at length during this last term about a property standards bylaw, and I don't see it anywhere on our list, and we do need it.
Yeah. It did not come up, Madam Mayor, and you're right. I would agree with you, and it really does dovetail fairly well into some of your other strategic priorities when it comes to things like derelict buildings, when it comes to things like selling more residential lots, or implementing a broader growth strategy. Having a bylaw that can help you achieve some of those objectives is really an essential tool.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I did hear that during my consultations about the property standards bylaw.
Okay.
I envision that being included into the schedule of updated bylaws, kind of fitting into that. So we can make reference to that because I do think that's necessary. And we've always talked, even back in the strategic plan. Or the service delivery review, the municipality needs to lead by example when it comes to building maintenance, and the property standards bylaw is a good tool for everybody to have a clear understanding what's expected when it comes to property standards. So we perhaps should include it as a separate item if you wish, but I certainly envision that being into that schedule of updated bylaws and master plans.
Yeah, I think it should be included as a separate, because we've never had it, so that it's a new inclusion, and then we can celebrate it standalone on its own when it's completed. And then, yeah, of course, David, will include it in the regular cycle.
I agree with that approach, Madam Mayor. I think it's a good one to have it separate. Any further comments or questions?
No, not seeing any. You can carry on.
So when we look at the recommended additions, and this is where we'll stop at the hot box as well. So we've taken note of some of the things you've said along the way, and so the governance one will be adjusted. But the yellow is the changes to look at it more visually to see how it looks, and certainly anything you've said, as I said, along the way we'll make those adjustments. But that's what it will look like in the at a glance. Of course, there will be more explanation in the body of the document as well, but that's what it looks like. So I'm going to take you to the hot box, and the reason.
Michael, just before we
Yes.
move into that discussion, I
Sure.
missed it in my notes. I wanted to talk about the Aboriginal Elders Advisory Committee.
Yes. Okay.
Originally, I actually put this forward back in 2018, 2019. And what I would like to have just a short discussion here with council, because now that I've been in some equity, diversity, inclusion committees and moving forward, I don't necessarily think we need a committee. I think we need to have a commitment at the governance level to incorporate the 94 calls to action where we can. Or to pick a couple for this term of council to incorporate. Like, we already have a land acknowledgement, so we can review that and ensure that it fits with our municipality and how we want to acknowledge the land. But I don't think we necessarily have to have a committee for that.
Would you like would you like further like a different type of language than on that, Madam Mayor? Are you suggesting something to replace that?
Yes, and I want to just, so any members of the community, this is because the Indigenous communities are already very overwhelmed with the items that they have to accomplish. And it would be concerning to me for us to put on more work, whereas we could do work. We could do our part of the relationship as a municipality. And I've heard more and more of this dialogue. So that's why I don't think this is something I would necessarily look more at trying to implement the calls to action that highlight municipalities that we can, and we are doing that. But we're actually saying we're going to implement, and maybe we pick 2 of the calls to action or 3 that directly relate to municipalities, because there's a few within the whole 94 that directly highlight municipalities. So I guess it would be, the term would be more that at a governance level, Hornepayne's committed to meeting the calls to action where they can, or it's something of that matter. I think it's very important, but I don't necessarily now sitting here, and at the time I was a brand new mayor, and this isn't the right course of action.
So the recommendation would be for the advisory committee to be removed and replaced with some sort of a wording around respond to calls to action of some sort, or something along that lines. Develop a strategy.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think AMO has done some work and some training. Like, I would be more, if we had like a commitment to take training each year at one of our council meetings, maybe the council meeting closest to Indigenous Day in June, something like that. It's a productive strategy we have. And then there's training sessions that are already available and out there. I think we need to do the work to learn the truth first before and then we try and implement reconciliation where we can in the municipality.
Okay, so is develop strategies to respond to calls to action, or develop strategies pertaining to reconciliation?
To truth and reconciliation. Truth and reconciliation. The 2 are bookends. They can't be separated.
Is that the language you would like?
Yes. And if council is agreeable to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor, on the topic of the asphalt hotbox, if we go back to the service delivery review in 2019, when we visited the township a couple of times and took note of a few things, the service delivery review recommended an asphalt hotbox with recycling capabilities. I'm at some point during this conversation, I'm going to ask David to add to this. David is a professional engineer, as you know. He's a civil engineer, and he was a road builder, so he has a great deal of expertise in this topic. But we understand that the report was presented to council, and a decision was made to remove the hotbox, and we would advise against this for a couple of reasons. The first is we believe that the report, as presented, it missed the asphalt capabilities for recycling, which is a huge component to what we were recommending. And we believe that the amount of work that could be done using a hotbox was grossly understated. I think the number was very low, and it may have been focusing on a very low level of what we would describe as pothole filling. And if you were to get an asphalt hotbox with recycling capabilities and only do a small number of potholes, we would advise against that too. But that's not what we were recommending. We were recommending a program-based system that has asphalt recycling capabilities so that milled asphalt, for example, could be reused and reapplied. And we were recommending a very aggressive program at the time. So we have great experience with this because back in the day when David and I were a CAO and mayor, we actually implemented one of these in the community we were with, and it was so successful at a number of things. It cut it increased customer satisfaction enormously. We stopped getting complaints basically on road condition after we implemented it. The program was far more than just repairing like a pothole. A pothole with coal patch or basic repairs to it will only last a few weeks to a few months, and then you're back to square one again. These types of repairs last far longer, and therefore you're not going back regularly to fix things. You wouldn't be just doing potholes. You would be where you have adjustments for ironworks, for example, where you have a manhole cover maybe that's popping up and cracking all around it. You would have areas where there would be previous road cuts that are in really bad shape. You'd be repairing that. So, and when these things are used, the asphalt pours out almost like a soup. It's not like a coal patch that just sort of you tamp it down and you hope it stays. I mean, this is a really sort of next level sort of repair. And if you were to do a program every year, followed by like a regular sort of patrol routine, say every 2 weeks during the summer, going out and doing additional repairs, we think your rate of return would be high. And why do you do this? It's because you're going to have to replace every road in your community at some point. And that's where the big dollars are spent. Now, if you're going to spend, I don't know, let's just say you have a road that's going to require a $300,000 rebuild. If you can defer that by 10 years because you've got a good program in place that's extending the life of the asset, then you're deferring a lot of work and you're still allowing for the road to perform in a manner that's acceptable. And you're able to plan for that future rehab in a more manageable way instead of being rushed into it. So it allows for the product to be extended quite a bit. I'm going to turn it over to David because, like I said, he's a professional engineer with civil expertise, and he's done this type of road repair stuff in the past. So, David, if you have something to add to that, I'd really appreciate it. Your mic's not on, David.
That was a pretty good summary. Just to add a few things. I didn't necessarily disagree with the report that came out. Obviously, there was a number of priorities for the township, and I think those priorities probably were valid. But I think recircling back and looking at this again and looking at it in terms of a program, not just spring pothole repairs, but an actual program to renovate roads to the best of your ability. They're not going to be perfect. My philosophy is if you can go out and fix 2 or 3 of the worst bumps on a residential street, and maybe fix a road cut here and adjust a manhole there, the drivability of that block is going to be significantly improved to the point where it's not, residents will be relatively happy using it. And it buys you some time to coordinate full repairs of the road base and the asphalt surface with underground servicing. So it provides that capability. The hot box we're talking about is basically a mini asphalt plant. And this is important for Hornepayne because you do not have asphalt readily available. I think you got to go to Hearst to get asphalt. This is actually, you actually put in recycled building materials. You can put in chunks of asphalt that were taken up through a road cut. And in a matter of hours, those are reclaimed and then turned back into asphalt. And then you can go and actually do a permanent repair to a pothole, a road cut, a manhole adjustment. So that's the idea that we have behind this. They're basically 4, 6, 8-ton units that you can get. And in a small driveway roller would be ideal, but you can even use a plate packer to do the repair if necessary. But a little small driveway roller, you might already have one of those. I don't know, but a plate packer also works. And it's to come up with a bit of a schedule over the summer where you have perhaps one key public works employee that's heading it up, and with a couple students, you can actually go out and accomplish quite a bit. So I guess the suggestion is to recycle, look at that hot box and in terms of what maybe can be accomplished in light of your road conditions.
And just to append to that is keeping it in your strategic plan. If grant funding comes along, again, that will be helpful if you can leverage the grant funding. There is another option, but it's less useful to you in the sense of how you do your roads. So communities that are doing a major road project every single year will sometimes also get a quote from the road builder to do a strategic repairs, a certain amount of square meters of road repairs, and you can tack that onto your tender at that time. So, for example, if you were doing a 3rd Avenue type project every year, you could do that. The issue is you're not, and then that means that you have several years potentially of gap between doing these types of repairs that will extend the life of the asset. So that's the only downside of doing it that way. So that's why we feel that keeping it on there is probably worth it for a community like yours, and we would recommend that.
Okay, thank you for that, Michael and David. I open up the floor now for questions from council. Councillor Stefanik, go ahead.
Yeah, I was 100% behind this project when it started way back when, and I was hot to trot specifically on that one. The major stumbling block was the cost. I mean, astronomical cost. City of Timmins bought one a year and a half ago, very successful. The taxpayers are very happy. It's almost instantaneous fix. You see it done within hours. So I think we should, I agree, I'm still for it, but I think we should keep it on the list. And such time there's possibility of grants, I would not want to see it eliminated.
What is the price of them?
I haven't.
Depending on the size, they're probably in the range of $75,000 to get one with recycle capabilities. But the cost of the asphalt afterwards is very minimal because you usually have a pretty good source of or can access whether it's millings or whether it's broken chunks of asphalt. Most municipalities can stockpile that over time, and so the cost afterwards is relatively minimal, other than for the energy to recycle it themselves. So, but that's kind of the range in price.
Yeah, and the high rate. there's a high rate of return on deferring your bigger projects too, because you're extending the life of the asset. So there's a huge amount of savings there as well.
And I don't know how your gas tax reserve is. I think Michael, I would think that this would qualify for gas tax. Michael would probably know better than me on that, but that might be an example of a funding source for it.
I just have a couple of questions because David, you had referred to the different sizes that are available.
Right.
And my question is linked to that because how big of a road repair is feasible? When you're saying, like, is this the whole length of the road by 2 feet? Like, are we able to repair some of the places that are already dug up along some of our roads? Like, how big of repairs can this accommodate?
It's restricted. Be honest with you, depending on the size of the unit. I can get that information for you and email it to you. But it's intended to do a typical road cut. I know you have regular water main breaks in the wintertime, as an example. You could easily repair that road cut in the spring.
Okay, can I just stop you there because I don't know what a typical road cut is. I don't know what that size is. Can you give me a size in your mind when you say typical road cut, what are you envisioning?
It could be 10 by 20 feet, 10 feet by 20 feet, kind of in that size.
Substantive. Like that's big to me.
Yeah, and you do it in 2 lifts. You do a bottom lift, wait a day and then do a finished lift over top of that. So within a couple of days, you'd have that road cut repaired.
Wow. Okay. From that then too, so that would be from the biggest unit available. And then with that road cut, you're saying we can use a driveway roller to mold the pavement into place or the asphalt?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the patchwork that you can do as well that makes it valuable.
And then for potholes, most you'd probably just use a plate packer. Like if you have a pothole, you put some coal patch in it in the spring. When the weather improves, you go out, you cut that back out, and then you do a permanent patch on that pothole. So that's something that's going to actually stay and last more than a month or so.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a suggestion actually that we add, because if you have a program, like if we're going to look at funding to get this, I want to know more about it, first of all, but asphalt hot box, like to purchase one, but then we need that implementation plan to go with it. And that doesn't hinder on us having it. We can have all of that done and then that supports our funding application, or even going to places like CN or the industry within our area and say, look, we need this. All of your people live here. Like, let's partner and buy it for the municipality and then have that fulsome plan for it.
I'll send you some links. There's some good links, some good YouTube videos on how they work. So I'll do that this weekend.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, just
a
a closing comment on that is we certainly never regretted getting it, and it was used heavily throughout the year, not just in the spring for potholes.
Okay. Is through the CAO, does the public works manager want to speak to this at all, or no? Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to look for council's recommendation here that we do add some sort of asphalt. I think we need to do that. Like that would be in the color coding, even ahead of us purchasing. That seem reasonable? In agreement? Okay, can we add that in some sort of terminology? The plan ahead of it?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, you cut out just when you said what you wanted to do. Could you repeat?
Yeah, so I was just getting consensus around council table that in addition to the asphalt hot box being listed, also the implementation program, I guess,
Okay.
however,
Understood.
that annual program that David and yourself spoke about, of how it's used and how it's implemented, because I think if we had that, we might be able to get the support to buy it.
Fair enough.
And just to circle back on a comment Michael made as well, and it actually you touched on it, Mayor, is it's going to be larger repairs that are outside the actual function of a hot box, little larger repairs. But to piggyback that on as a miscellaneous paving item onto a tender is really the ideal way of doing that. So when you already have people in that are doing asphalt paving, if you can identify areas that need to be repaired on other streets, you can put a miscellaneous paving item into the tender and deal with those larger repairs. And that's probably the most efficient way of doing it, rather than bringing in somebody separately to do that. So just, it would be kind of part of the overall program to use both resources.
Yes, it's just some things are coming apparent to me through our municipality right now where this could be of use to us, where there's smaller areas that are just troublesome, and this could be a solution.
Okay.
Anyway, okay. I have no further comments or questions.
Madam Mayor, the plan next, as part of the program we have for the development of the draft strat plan, is for us to go to work now and make it read based on the feedback we collected leading up to today and the additional feedback we've received from you this morning, and produce a draft strat plan for your final eyes to look at, and we will present that to you. I think it's at the end of April, if I'm not mistaken, and it will pick up on everything we've said here. And should there be at that time when we present it to you any sort of lingering last-minute edits that you would like to see, or if our choice of words was not exactly what you wanted, you'll be able to guide us in that direction at that last visit with you.
Okay, great. I just have one final comment as I'm looking at the yellow under technology. In the recovery plan, could we ensure that there's training in there for council for using our technology? We really have never gotten that in using the iPads and the now we have laptops and that sort of thing. And especially when we're talking about our emails.
Okay.
There's a lot of training that needs to be done there, so.
Yep.
Or would be helpful for us.
All right.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Through the CEO clerk if the treasurer can speak.
Oh, for sure, yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question for Michael, and David. Do you guys think that we are able to accomplish all of this by the end of 2026? Yeah.
Well, I think it's good to be ambitious. It's good to be reasonable as well. And so there's two comments I have on this. Is earlier on in the presentation, I made a comment about managing expectations, and that came from council as well as staff, that making sure that we can do what we can do, and recognizing that there is a finite limit to our capacity to do things. So if you recall, the last one that we did had a lot on it, and then you got hit with COVID-19, the second pandemic in the 100 years or so. So it definitely placed a whole host of changes and pressures on municipalities that nobody could have predicted. So I think it's possible that you could achieve all of these, but it's very rare for every thing on your list 4 years later to be completely removed. So your objective here is to use it as a prioritization tool for planning purposes, and you take your best, you put your best foot forward at attempting to complete as many as you can. It's very hard to predict what you might be faced with in a year or two that might change things. And that's why it's so important that annually there is a strategic plan report put in front of council. And the best time to do that is before the budget is adopted, so that if there are any, important things that come about, that need to be in front of council, that course corrections can be made. I mean, ideally, you stay on your beaten path because it's important to do so, but it's also important to monitor your progress. So I can't say that you'll get everything done on your list, but if you don't have a good list and it's not prioritized accordingly, you won't get anything done. So the important thing here is that you use this to guide your decision making. The council recognizes, and I think they have based on their comments, that you know, expectations have to be realistic as well, and you have to be adaptable. David, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, and ambition is great. It has to be manageable though. You know, the goals that you set for yourself, you want to be able to attain. You know, so I think it's important to be realistic. There's a lot of things on the list, but breaking it out into manageable chunks over a period of 4 years, I think you've done really great strides in the previous strategic plan. So there's no reason to believe you can't continue on with that progress. There's a few on there as an example that aren't done internally by staff. So that some of that stuff is done outside of staff. The master plan, as an example, would be done outside of staff. So there's that to look at. And it's also to be ready for grants. So a lot of this, you know, some of these items will be on there and they're on there waiting for funding. And you want to be in a position to move if that funding opportunity comes along. So that would be the trigger for moving on something. So yeah, it's ambitious, but I think it's doable if you are strategic about it. And you know.
So Mayor,
Hello?
with your approval, we would suggest that we would go back to the drawing board and try to finalize this in what would be the final draft, if you will, and be back to you in, I believe it's the end of April that we would be back to you with the final draft.
Okay, I'm not sure if Councillor Kissemaker Belinda, did you have a comment?
We need that. So
I'm sorry, we're having a difficulty hearing you, Belinda.
it's
Yeah, we couldn't make out anything you had said. I'm sorry. Okay. There will be opportunity, like Michael had said, Belinda, that when we have the final presentation, there is not that we would be adding or extracting anything of significance from the document, but there is opportunity there as well, just if you had connectivity issues today. And with that, I want to thank David and Michael for putting the information together. And I would like to add one question about the survey. We will see the final survey results at the presentation as well then, because that closes at the end of the month.
Yes, there's another, I think, about 8 or 9 days left for the survey, and yes, we can certainly include that with the package. And if should there be anything, you know, that shifts direction at all, we'll make sure we address that in our presentation as well.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for presenting today and wish you both a good rest of your weekend and giving us the time today in Hornepayne.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye for now. We have the adjournment. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Peter Kissemaker, second by Councillor Ted Shenneman. Be it resolved that the bylaw number 1999 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at their special meeting held on Saturday, March 25th, 2023 be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Those in favor? And that is carried. And the adjournment of the meeting, if I can have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Drago Stefanik, second by Councillor Ted Shenneman. Be it resolved that hereby adjourn the special meeting of council held on Saturday, March 25th, 2023 at 11:49 a.m. And those in favor? And that is carried. Okay.